Hey everyone, welcome to part 4 of the Lord of Blights Masterclass. So we've done the skin and we've done the armour. Like I said, we'll probably go back to those later and tweak a few things with them as we paint the model. So I think the next place we're going to go to, I just want to paint the cloth here on the front and the back. So we said in the planning video we'll do like a muted sort of deep red or something. So I was thinking like a dark red, but we'll put some of the green tones that we've got in the armour into the red, so it ties it in with the rest of the model. So like I said, getting the tones throughout the whole model so the model doesn't feel disparate or separate or anything like that. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to thin down some corn red with a touch of water, not too much, and then I'm just going to coat the whole of the cloth with corn red, keeping it thin. A couple of coats. I'll do the front loincloth, and I'll also do the back as well, do the whole of the back and come back and show you how that looks. So take about 2 or 3 coats, keep it thin, keep your brush moving, let it dry and then go over it again, as we always do. So I'll come back in a second once I've gone over that. Okay, so the cloth now has got a coat of corn red on it. So a solid base coat, so there's a few coats just to get that solid base coat of corn red. And now we're going to do some shading first. So we're going to mix corn red and Incubi Darkness together on the palette and make it into a wash consistency. So you guys can see there it's quite thin. That's the sort of colour we should be looking for. So about 50-50 mix. So yeah, adding the Incubi Darkness in, which is the green tone, which is in the armour. It's going to give a natural shade for the red, but also pull in the tones from the armour into the cloth as well, which is going to help. So I'm pretty much just going to wash this over all of the cloth, allowing it to run into the recesses, like so. Being neat with it as well, so it doesn't hit the skin. And I'll do that with the back as well. We'll wash it over the whole area and we'll let it dry and we'll come back in a minute. Okay, so the wash is dry now, so you can see that there. It's just give us a nice natural shade for that red. It's sitting quite nicely, so we're going to do another shade now. So just thin down some black paint. We're getting that sort of consistency, sort of wash consistency again. And then we're just going to recess shade there, the darkest recesses, the deepest recesses on the cloth. So selective washing now. So not all over, just where we want it. So we're going to go in those holes. Got some recesses there. Paint along the top. That's where it meets the belly. Just a small amount. And then do the same on the back. So just with the thin black, just going in the deep recesses. So I'll do this and we'll come back once it's done. So as that black shade's drying, I think what I'm going to do is just go at the bottom of the loincloth and just get our Incubi Darkness and corn red mix, which we've got, which is at the wash consistency still. I'm just going to glaze that over the bottom of the cloth, just to darken down the bottom of the cloth. I want to go and make sure the bottom of the loincloth is darker than the top, to make it feel like it's been hitting the ground and it's a bit dirty at the bottom. Plus it's going to draw attention towards the top of the model. So when we highlight cloth, normally your natural instinct is to highlight down like this, but really you want to keep the top area a bit lighter. So the bottom of the cloth's a bit dirtier and a bit darker. So I'm just putting a little bit of that at the bottom here. Just whilst that black is drying. So I'll just glaze it over. So we'll let that dry and we'll go into some highlights next for a little while. You guys can see the bottom is a little bit darker than the top now. Okay, so our shading is dry now. So we're going to do some highlights. So thin down some corn red. So we've got a nice sort of thin consistency. And we're going to start highlighting the cloth now. So just concentrating on the raised areas, leaving our shaded washes and the recesses. Just carefully picking out the raised areas of the cloth. So we want the cloth to be quite a dark red still, so this is normally just a highlight now. We're going to go over the whole thing. So where there's larger, flatter areas of the cloth, just cover it in the corn red. So when it comes to the bottom area now, just try to, if you can, highlight upwards, and we're leaving the darker colours at the bottom of the cloth. So don't go all the way down. You can see what I'm doing here. Just highlighting in this middle section. And I'm going to do this all over and show you how it looks once we're done. Okay, so that's the corn red highlight layer down now. You can see it's just re-established that colour back on there. So we're going to keep highlighting back up now. So I've got some Mephiston red on my palette and I've thinned it down quite a lot. So it's sort of almost wash consistency. And I'm just going to be glazing this over, again, those raised areas. I think the cloth's lacking a bit of colour. It's almost disappearing into the skin a little bit. So we want some contrast in it now. So we're going to add a stronger red tone to the highlights. So the contrast we're getting here is contrast with colour rather than contrast with the shade. I'm just going to add this over, glaze it over a few times, just to punch a bit of colour into the cloth. So I want it to be a bit more red. So I'll go over all of this. Just on the raised areas, we're leaving some of the corn red showing. So we're going a little bit higher with our highlights. Let it dry, go over it again until you're happy. Same here, so working upwards. So not painting too far down. Just into the raised areas there. So I'll go over the cloth and show you how that looks in a minute. Okay, so the Mephiston red highlight's done now, so I'll just show you guys there. So it's more of just a glaze over really, just to get a bit of colour back in. And then we're going to do end of the highlight now. We're going to go with Evil Sun Scarlet. And I'm going to thin that down to the same consistency of the Mephiston red. So almost a wash consistency, so it's very thin. So I still feel that this cloth could do with a bit more colour. So just concentrating on further raised areas, leaving our previous highlights showing. Just glazing it over. Just adding the colour in where it's needed on the top. I want this cloth to be a little bit more intense in colour. So really just repeating that process that we've just done, but being a bit more selective with our highlights. And I'll just go over the whole thing and show you how that looks now. Okay, so that's the Evil Sun Scarlet highlight done. If we can just show you guys that there. So really just pulling some red into the loincloth. So I think, we did some texture on the armour. That's got that pitted sort of mottled texture that we did. And the skin is quite smooth. We need to put a bit of texture into this cloth so that it feels like it's actually cloth made out of a different material. So we could have done the stippling effect on this, but I think we'll go for like a slightly like heavy linen sort of feel with it. So just using that Evil Sun Scarlet that's thinned down, we'll start adding some. What we'll do is we'll do like a few lines here and there, just like this. So do them one way, and then turn it and do them the other way. So we're almost cross-hatching a little bit. It's going to be very subtle to start with, and we'll do a little bit more. Well, if you just do it over where the darker areas are, just a few lines, not a lot. Cross it over. It'll give that cloth a slightly different feel. It's reinforcing that it's a different surface made out of a different material, so on the back as well. So one way first, like so, and then the other way. So if you guys can see there a little bit. So I'll do that over just on the raised areas, and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so I've started putting a bit of texture into the cloth now. I think you can probably see it a little bit more on the back. Yeah, we're going to go on to the next stage now. So this is Wild Rider Red. And I'm just filling that down with a bit of water. And then I'm going to start picking out a lot of the edges for highlights now. So rather than, because if I go over the whole area that we've just done, we're going to lose the red. So I'm just going to go to the edges, just pick out the edges of the cloth. And the very sharpest raised folds and creases in the cloth. Only a small amount. We don't want the cloth to turn orange. I'll go around those areas, and when it comes to like the bottom of the cloth, I'll just pick out the corners, and then I might start picking out the detail at the bottom, just to show what's going on at the bottom of the cloth. Just very faintly, just a little highlight here and there. So I'm going to do this and then show you how that looks in a second. Okay, so there's the Wild Rider Red highlights there, that's all done. You can see how that looks. And like I said, I just picked out the bottom of the cloth as well, just to show the shape of it. Just a thin highlight at the bottom. So we're going to do the same thing as what we did with the Evil Sunz Scarlet. We're going to just give it a bit of texture again. So just going over the areas that we've already done. So just go one way, just only on the highlighted areas, and then the other way a little bit, just really subtle. Just give it a slightly textured feel, like it's heavy linen. Don't do it over the whole area, just where the highlights are. This is with the Wild Rider Red still. So just where the light would probably pick up that texture. A little small amount of cross hatching, like so. And I'll do this on the highlighted areas and show you how it looks in a second. Okay, so that's the Wild Rider Red texturing done there. You can see it's still quite subtle, but it's there, and it's making it feel different to the armour and the skin. And that's the main thing we want. So we're going to highlight again now. So I've done a 50-50 mix of Wild Rider Red and Kislev Fletch, and it's given us a natural highlight. So rather than going for the oranges, I've just mixed in that flesh tone just to give it quite a natural sort of highlight there. Almost like a flesh colour. And we're just going to really concentrate on the very edges. Even our previous highlights where we want them. And the raised areas. Picking them out, a small amount. Leaving some of our previous highlights showing. So I'm going to go around the loincloth and do this first, and then come back. Okay, so that's the Wild Rider and Kislev Flex mix there, just on the edges. See that I've just picked out very raised areas. And then we're going to just use a bit of that thinned mix now. And we're going to go on the very raised bits of the textured areas that we've done. Just go over those. It's really subtle now. Tiny little lines. Just where the highlights would be the strongest. Don't worry about those lines being exactly over the last ones you did. It's the texture we're after. It's not supposed to be like a pattern. So I'm going to go over all of those areas. You can see what I'm going to do, and I'll show you in a second. Okay, that's the texturing with that mix done now. So hopefully you guys can see that. So we're just going for a different feel with the cloth. So last highlight with the cloth now, just on the very extreme edges, and here and there like a dot highlight. We'll just do a bit of Kislev Flesh. It's very thin. So like just find the corners, maybe here. It's the very sort of tips of the cloth. And maybe where the folds are the most raised. So this is just a very small amount. I'll go and do this and then come back and show you how it looks then. Okay, so that's that final highlight done now there with Kislev Flesh. And what tends to happen with reds when you're highlighting it loses its saturation. So you can probably see this now, this sort of red that we're going for is sort of sinking into the skin colour at the minute as it stands. So like I said, we'll go back to the skin later, but I'd like this red to be a little bit stronger so there's some nice contrast. So I've just mixed together some Flesh Tearers Red contrast and contrast medium on the palette. So I've actually done quite a dilute mix. So sort of like that. And then this is going to go over the entire cloth that we've just painted. Even the recesses, the whole area. I want to make that red cloth nice and strong now, so it doesn't appear washed out. Just one coat over it and that will do fine. It shouldn't be destroying any of our work that we've done. It should be just making that colour nice and strong. Just going over the front now. Just being careful. Keep your brush moving, try not to let the contrast paint dry until you've done the whole area. That's the trick with contrast paint. Okay, so I'll let that dry now and we'll come back and have a look. Okay, so that Flesh Tearers Red glaze is pretty much dry now. You can see it's just made that red a little bit stronger, so it's popping out from the green and the skin. And as I always do, I'll take some photographs and then we'll do a recap of this part in a minute. Okay guys, there's pictures now of the finished cloth. I think in the picture it comes out a little bit more red than what it is in real life. So if yours is a bit darker, that's fine. You can see the fine cross-hatch texturing that we added, which gives it a nice different feeling to the armour and the skin, like a heavy linen. I'll put up close-ups and reference pictures on my Instagram so you guys can check those out as well. There'll be a link below. And I'll see you in the next tutorial for the next part. And take it easy until then, and I'll see you soon. Bye.